Hi, Arpu. Good morning or good afternoon in India. Hi, audience. This is Parul, Life and Leadership Coach, and today we bringing you another episode of a motivational interview. And because this is a suicide prevention month and week, we decided to talk about something really important to us, and we have a special guest, Arpu Kumar. She is a Indian barrister, but also she's an international human rights lawyer. So I'm not going to talk about much Arpu because I want her to introduce to you and talk a bit about herself. So hi Arpu, thanks for your time, and uh, can you please introduce yourself and tell us about who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So about your story, really.
Thank you, Parul, for having me on this show. And it feels great to be part of something, especially during this International Suicide Prevention Week. We all know that 10th of September is celebrated as an International Suicide Prevention Day. So I am grateful that you gave me this opportunity to be part of your show, which is, not only to motivate people to learn to overcome difficulties in their lives, but also to send across a message to a wider audience that there is always hope and life is too big to be cut short, by suicide or by any step that stops you from living. So thank you once again. And as far as introducing myself goes, well, like you've already mentioned, I'm an Indian by descent, and I have started working as an international human rights lawyer. And a specific job which I have in hand right now is with a UK-based community interest company, which is Split the Difference. So the charity works to support men and boys, and it actually has a goal to ensure that we make all services accessible for men and boys as much as they are accessible for women and girls, because we have a narrative which support women. Those Split the Difference, or I, in my personal capacity and professional as well, we're not against supporting women and empowerment of women, but at the same time we are mindful of the fact that when it comes to the principle of equality, it is a narrative which needs to include both men and women. We cannot talk about equality, especially gender equality, by excluding men and boys totally from the narrative, which usually is becoming the practice nowadays. So my job involves to develop strategies and push for policy reforms through, intergovernment organizations, through charities, and also at a larger level or at a global level, push the United Nations to take action, for example, to establish a UN Men entity for gender parity on the lines of UN Women entity for gender equality. So we have just begun. I have just started my job not so long ago, so everything is exciting. The challenging part about the job is that I am going to be part of something, and I am being part of something which is um, out of like league for many. I will stand in my own league if I go down in the books of history that I supported cause for gender equality from the other side of the spectrum, which is men and boys, because usually we have lots of people supporting women and girls, but not men and boys. So I feel proud of myself, and I'm grateful to God for having this opportunity to do this. And as part of my job and my work assignments, I'm looking into international legislation starting from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, then the Convention on the Rights of Child, because I'm also working in child abuse sector where we work to prevent children from being sexually exploited and children from violence, especially in public spaces and domestic spaces. So, and the third part of my international research also involves around studying about Istanbul Convention, which is one of the most landmark legal instruments of our times and very powerful one too, to support domestic abuse legislation. So in the UK, we have the Domestic Abuse Amendment Act 2021 introduced, and now the law is enforced fully. So we're trying to work through Split the Difference, and I, in my independent capacity, to highlight where the services for men are lacking, where we lack the support system for men and boys, because anybody could suffer from violence. It's not just women, and anybody could be a perpetrator, and anybody hence could be a victim too. You don't have to belong to a specific gender to become a perpetrator or a victim. So this is about my work.
Well, thank you very much, Arpu. You're doing so much research, and also, important point you raised, being equal, is equality. Yeah, we have to look at both perspective. Preparator, yeah, it comes from all background. Victim, both sexes. We shouldn't be excluding. But it's interesting you're focusing on men, because mostly, as you said, because women and girls are always victim, we just focus on those, but forgetting that men also are victim too. So it's great point. Yeah, so as we talk, really like to hear from you more. So, I mean, as we celebrating on or raising awareness about suicide preventions, why, from your thought perspective, why do you think, people think that extreme to take their own life? What makes them to go into the extreme thought process?
Well, let's begin with something to do with international suicide prevention's theme for year 2021. So the theme for this designated day this year is creating hope through action. So we know that the world has become a rough place to live in after COVID. We all had our own shares of difficulties. So I think there are loads and loads of reasons behind a person having suicidal ideation. So if a person thinks that he or she doesn't want to live or have no purpose to live, this brings us to the point where we think, oh, suicide is a complex topic. It is a very sensitive subject which is not open to debate and discussion in public domain as much as we should have it discussed. So I would start to project with some statistical data from the WHO statistical data visualization
Yeah.
dashboard. So the data which is currently available from the year 2016 actually shows a global average of suicide rates to be much higher in men than in women. So again, talking about men here, but suicide is suicide. I would like to reiterate the fact that every life is important, irrespective of
Absolutely.
your gender, age, or any other factor. So the reasons could be many. We'll go into reasons, but I would just like to mention global average rates of suicide, for European men and women. So as per the statistical data, we have sampled from like 100,000 population. So we discuss the rates like on basis of crude suicide rates per 100,000 of population. So out of this, the global average, shows that, 13.5% of males die due to suicide, every year, and a 7.7% of females commit suicide.
Wow,
So
it's almost double of men.
that is almost double, and this is the striking contrast which we uh, see in statistical data. And we know that generally we have more of support systems in terms of healthcare facilities, in terms of social facilities, and acknowledgements for women and girls than for men and boys. But as you see the data, you see that the global average is higher for men. It is almost double than the rate of suicide for women, which stands at 7.7 for women, like I mentioned. And the same way, if we talk about regional averages, the regional average, let's say, we can just talk about Europe, because we are closer to Europe geographically, like from the UK. So the regional average for, like, say, 100,000 population sample, we have a number, a low of, it sounds a little awkward, but it's a low rate still, that a low of 6.6% of females commit suicide, as against a much, much higher rate, which is 24.7% of males in the Europe that commit suicide. So this actually is unfortunate, no matter whether the data for women is low or high, but I mean, it's distressful. So I can tell you at least there are 20 countries all over the world that are, that have actually made suicide illegal. So, we know some Sharia countries where we also know that people who attempt suicide, they might be punished, for trying to attempt suicide. So they have the Sharia country, the countries that follow Sharia law, they have legal penalties that range from small fines or short prison sentence to as big as life imprisonment. So this is an overview of the statistical data around suicide. Now we move on to the causes. So the causes could be like any factor from what you think that oh, your life is not worth living because you have lost a job, or you are suffering from a bad marriage or a bad relationship outside of marriage, that you're not married. So anything can trigger suicidal tendencies, and it is not the act of suicide that is the final conclusion of ending one's life. That is very dangerous, which in fact is, and we know that because there is end of life, and after that we can't do anything. But the very red flags that we get in our life from people behavior, they are the most dangerous trends that you can witness in a human being. When the person is secluded, he's aloof, he doesn't mix in his social circle, doesn't go out with his peers, he remains reclusive. So all these behavior tendencies, these are a few red flags that we all should be mindful in our surroundings, to notice them in the people that we live with, we work with, or we meet in our day-to-day lives. So this is one aspect which even COVID has brought to the central stage, that COVID made us physically aloof from our natural environment, from our social environment, because we have to follow social distancing. We could not go out due to lockdown restrictions. We could not spend time with our families because we were not all living in a same household. So we all know what went through global, what we all went through everywhere in the world, and how it was in the UK. We all have experienced that. I have a lived experience of living a very secluded life where telephone or mobile phone was the only way we could communicate with people. Social media helped a lot that we could connect, but still we need that physical contact to be able to hug each other, to be able to have that sort of warmth exchanged, because we all are human beings and we have thriving lives. So COVID showed us that emotional closeness matters, empathy matters, but uh, as much we all missed going out and seeing our friends and playing out in real, studying in real, working out in real, office environments, we all we all could conclude that a lot many people went into their own small cocoons of being depressed, being out of life, struggling with self-image, their own social image, having lost opportunities to thrive them thrive, in an environment where they would flourish. So all these factors also contributed to suicidal thoughts and tendencies amongst people. And apart from this, all the traditional factors that you have some financial burden which you think will never end, even if you do the best that you can do in your life. So you decide, now there is no purpose in my life, so I should end my life and let the world be where it is. So I get relieved of my pain, I end myself, and I don't get to live anymore. So I have a thought that, okay, I might not be able to perform better in my exams. So like young people struggle with performance issues. So they would think that the grades that they get in schools are the standard parameters of their success in their life. So if they don't perform well in exams, we see lots and lots of people at a very, very younger age during their student years committing suicide because they could not perform well in their examinations. So this is one of the triggers of suicide again. So for elderly people, if they are not, because we all human beings desire to be wanted. So if you are not wanted, if you are not considered worth it, or if you are not useful for the family that you're living in, for the community that you're living in, you don't have that solidarity factor attaching you to your immediate surroundings, then that could trigger those isolated feelings in your mind that penetrate deep inside you to compel you to end your life. And for all youngsters, relationships could be one of the major reasons that they would think, if they fail in relationships or if they are attached to a person and the person leaves them, then they might decide to take on their life, that they don't want to live because they have lost the purpose. Because it's when you fail in a relationship or when you suffer from a breakup in a relationship, it's almost like bereavement. You have phases of anxiety, you have phases of those triggers where you probably want to hit yourself, harm yourself, and the worst, to end your own life. So these factors, apart from the financial reasons that you don't have a good job, you feel a low self-esteem because you cannot bring food on table for your family, your children and wife or husband maybe. So uh, so all of that might, act as a symbolic red flag. Any of these factors or multiple factors out of all of the ones that I've mentioned, we can go on and on with that.
Yeah, now thank you. Now that's great. I mean, you mentioned quite a lot of important points. I think one of the statistics really shocked me because you mentioned in Europe there's 6% of female and 24% of male kind of data showing, which is like 4 times more of men. And you mentioned like women's and girls kind of services is always there, but not many male services.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's not highlighted, the men suffers too, mostly women's raise awareness. And the other thing you mentioned about people's feelings and why that feelings led to kind of extreme. Now we know the women are more vocal, They talk about their feelings, they talk about their issues, where male could be reserved. And I don't know whether there's COVID data available during COVID, but suicide rate went quite high during COVID as well. And you mentioned about, school, college, university being shut. I mean, I've seen news, Asia, Europe, uh, students, taking their own life because they can't cope, they couldn't cope with the lockdown. So I think it's lockdown obviously put extra pressure. So yeah, it is sad that people going to die, but it's really interesting, kind of like you mentioned about red flag, that everybody is all of our responsibility to be around and be aware about the red flags, what people doing, and put a arms of hope, put a hope that there is there is a way forward to life. It doesn't have to be going that way. So that's really good. As we are in Suicide Prevention Month and week, what's your thoughts on awareness raising? Why you think is really important to raise awareness?
Well, Parul, like I said, that we have a theme, for this year's International Suicide Prevention Day, which is creating hope through action. So, I mean, it's like it's something that comes to my mind on awareness, on red flags, on whatever we might think that we could help people to come out and talk about issues that disturb them. I would just begin by saying that, stigma is a major barrier to, uh, prevent us or preventing us from seeking help. So we think like if I have a suicidal tendency, I am already in that mindset where I will not go out to seek help because I'm already coping with so much psychologically. But for example, if I have friend circle or immediate, family who could see changes in my behavior, notice my behavior pattern that is not like I used to be, if I would have been popular as a cheerful person, then this raises all the concerns of all the people who want me to live. So the next step has to be that somebody should come forward to talk to me about it. Like, what is disturbing me? What is bothering me? So the best thing we can do to create awareness is to talk about it, is to spread positivity in the world
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
this is not the end. Wherever you are in life, that's not the end unless you die of a sudden or a natural death, which is through accident or any mental health or anything. But when you come to take your own life by yourself, that you want to press trigger of the gun to your temples and shoot yourself, or you just want to jump, you know, from a bridge and kill yourself, or any other method, which you think could be used to kill yourself in that stage of life where you think that it is the end. I think we need to raise awareness about these aspects of life, that it is never the end of life for any person at any stage, no matter what we suffer from, because we know we lose our loved ones to death, and it is a cycle we all have to go through. I recently lost my father. I have been a bereaved daughter. So, as a person with lived experience of bereavement, I could tell out to everyone watching us out there that the day I heard this news, I was in the UK and it was end of my world. My world came crashing down. I was preparing for my degree exams, and there comes a call that informs me about my father's demise, and my world is turned upside down. So it was so much to take and absorb at that time, because you are instantly engulfed in all the past memories of, your father, and then the worry about your mother, worry about your sibling, the worry about what is going to happen next. What about my family? What about me now? What about this, that? We have all those questions coming into our mind, and you feel this is end of the world. And honestly, I felt the same. I felt the world is over. I should also not live anymore. I should kill myself. So sudden rush of feelings, which actually makes you feel that you should commit suicide because you have no right to live now. There's nothing to life now. But almost 2 years now of suffering that tragic moment in my life, not only suffering, but living through it because I traveled all the way back from Europe, UK to India to see my mother within 14 hours of hearing the news. It took me 14 hours to reach back to India and be there with my mother. And those 14 hours were the longest of my life until I touched base at the airport in India. So all I can tell you is that those feelings of that period of immediate pain of losing a parent and the time now that time has passed, time helps to heal your wounds. The difference is that I'm no more the same person as I used to be because I've suffered from that bereavement. But I can tell you, as time passes by, I might get somewhat emotional, but as time passes by, people around you, your friends, your colleagues, your immediate family, helps you to become normal once again. Your own habits, maybe some prayers, maybe pursuing a hobby. For example, if you like to flower the garden, look after the garden of your house. So if you like to be close to nature to calm yourself, you like to be part of some meditation sessions, or you like to practice yoga or any exercise to bring back yourself to life, to reconnect you to life, you know that there are options, and somebody just triggers that, thought of connecting you back to life. It really helps. It really helps to uh, rebuild yourself from that point in time. So I had loved ones dealing with my issues, making me talk about them, somebody as empathetic as you are to listen me at this point in time. I have had experiences of people listening to me. So the problem with people in distress is that they don't want solutions. They don't want any immediate solution to quick fix the situation. All they want is an empathetic person, listen to what they have to say without judgment and without any predisposition that the person himself has. So if you see somebody struggling with academic depression that might trigger suicidal thoughts, you should take charge of that situation and talk about it to the child or the adolescent or the person that you're dealing with. And you should never abstain yourself from taking that step thinking that it might make situation more complex, because if you talk, then the person might come up with a reply to you that what is your business. This is one of the factors which stops all of us from actually talking. We should say, say I observe this as part of English culture that no, let's give the person privacy. It is important to give person privacy. We all have right to privacy. I am a human rights lawyer, so how much more will I talk about right to privacy? You know that we can have tens and thousands of episodes around it. I support privacy, but there is a thin line between being a very private person and being a very isolated and secluded person. So if you try to show withdrawal symptoms from your day-to-day activities, your eating pattern, your leisure, activities, your routine work activities, something is certainly a cause of concern for that person. So how about just asking about, hey, what's going on? Are you fine? Are you happy? You can talk to me about it if you feel comfortable. I'm here. Call me anytime. Just check up on all those people. Take time to talk. That's most important. As we know, during COVID, we could not connect, with loads and loads of friends and acquaintances and immediate family members in real time and also virtually as much as we wanted, because we diminished those lines of work from office and brought working from home to be the new norm. And as a result, we had more time given to work than to our families, or trying to juggle and making a perfect balance, which we never can make as human beings, because there would be something which will always take the best part of you from your life, you know. So I think that when we try to spread positivity in society by just checking upon our friends or sending them a positive message every morning when we speak to them, or when we engage in any text conversations with them, I think you may never know, but that helps, because I have a personal experience where that there were a couple of friends who would send me some Bible quotes, as a morning text. So sometimes when I used to be very depressed last year, when I was grieving my father's demise, so those words in those texts, say something from book of Psalms, something from book of John, something from book of Samuel's, would help me to just change flow of my thoughts into that, like God is my refuge, so Lord is my refuge. So I could just change a thought in my head that, okay, I need not be negative, I can just sit down to pray and see if that helps to change situation in my life. So this happens with hope as well, which is, like I am mentioning again, that the theme for this year's this year's International Suicide Prevention Day. Hope is actually anything to any person. It depends on the person talking, what hope means to you. So there, there are people who ascribe the meaning of hope to prayers, of something higher than us, that I hope that this project becomes successful. So I have ascribed hope to faith in the God that I believe in. So it is something higher than me. Then there is hope that I hope I'll do my best. So this hope is about taking every action to the best of my ability that actually will ensure that all the steps that I take in my life, would be in the best direction. So basically, the meaning of hope boils down to just one sentence, that it's something that people hope or people expect to be the best of all the outcomes that they are putting their efforts in. So it's like, to have hope, is to want an outcome that makes your life better in some way. So if you make your life better in some way, taking steps which are actions, like we have hope and action to be part of the theme this year, like I said. So if we take actions to make our lives better in some way, then that can only make things easier to present a tough situation, to appear like that, okay, we still have time, we can overcome the difficulties in this situation, and motivate ourselves to aspire for a better future. So it's like conditioning your brain to work in a manner where we can open up about what concerns us. Then after talking, taking something out of that discussion, that this is the positive part, and keep that positivity in your head, to not to have those negative thoughts overpower the positive aspects of what you are working on. So when it comes to the notion that women are more vociferous in conveying what they are feeling, or they are more expressive, I agree, but to an extent, and with a disclaimer or a condition that we have created this society for us. And as we project ourselves, we project the society to, not only perceive its individuals as we would like them to be perceived, because we are part of that society. So, but also we tend to create a norm that this is what women do, this is what men do. So here comes the question of accessibility in services, which I'm working on right now, that the stereotypes that we have, that women talk more about their feelings and men do not. the question comes the question that comes in is, have we provided men with those outlets and channels where they can go out in open and talk what concerns them? What are their issues? What actually causes them trauma? And what stigmatized them? Or what is the reason of they feeling emotionally aloof and withdrawn? This is about the setup that we live in. So now is the time that we come forward to not only create channels of outlet for men and women, but also make them, come to a level where they can support each other. If we can talk, being a man, I can talk to my wife about what concerns me without the fear of judgment from the society and from the woman who's my wife. This actually will open up a channel of conversation and communication that may prevent me from having any negative thought which might lead me to trigger that act of suicide. And now one reason why men have more suicide rates than women. It is because men perhaps are more inclined genetically to see through their action that they have begun than women are or might be. So let me explain it a little. When you have those thoughts in your head which compel you to take your own life, those are triggerers. So that triggerer could immediately be put into a result by shooting myself in the head or doing anything that kills me. This tendency is more in men. Not that they are more violent, but they are genetically more programmed to conclude the action that they have started. So the triggerer in
more extreme, to take more extreme action.
Exactly. It is more extreme in men than it could be in women, because women could be distracted due to anything, but a man will take time to get distracted from something. It is because of the lack of communication channels. It is due to the lack of support system that men have, around themselves, to not only talk between themselves as a part of family, but also even as part of friends, group or a peer group. So I think we all are vulnerable, but when it comes to seeking help, we should always know that we have help available. For example, we have good smart hands in the UK. We can call them, they listen to you, they talk to you. It is a 24-hour service, that is available 24/7 for all people seeking help. Colleges, universities, educational institutions, public spaces like railway stations, the bus stops, and the common public spaces like parks, they all have information about good smart hands, and it will be a good idea to put helpline numbers after this
sure,
chat session also for people to go and seek help. And for people like you yourself, you are a public figure, life and leadership coach. So we all, I even my own capacity, in my own capacity of being a human rights lawyer, I could come out for talk sessions to motivate people to be positive, because there is so much of negativity when we start our television sets showing death and destruction, that we all need daily dose of positivity, and it has become more important in times that we are living in, especially after the post-COVID world era, because we all were even secluded due to quarantine and self-isolation rules to prevent ourselves from that infection. See the irony of things. We wanted to prevent ourselves from getting, that infection, from contracting that infection, but human beings are social animals. So we had to live away in one house if we are happening to show symptoms of this disease. So we couldn't talk even while living in the same house to the people who live with us. That was social isolation about, that was self-isolation about, what was about, and that was quarantining, all about. So you had to have your separate food, you can't eat together, you can't sit together, you can't do anything together basically, let alone going out of your house. So some people unfortunately suffered, they could not survive, and then they left that void and trauma in lives of people who were closely related to them. So imagine how much more we had to cope, or we have to cope in the future, where we are trying to readjust and realign our lives to the post-COVID world, where
Thank
we
you.
want to
Thank you, Arpu. You
right.
know, yeah, you talked about awareness raising and the importance of us public raising awareness, but you also mentioned about, anybody thinking the extreme, what's help is available. You went on talking about some of the practical tips. You talked about meditation, having the faith, changing our thought process. So my next question was going to be, if you could be precise, just give few more tips what practically people can do, maybe 5 tips. Okay, if this thought process comes, what you need to do, that would be really helpful.